Doctor, we are ready to start.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Wonderful. Distinguished speakers and guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning to those who are in Portugal and good afternoon to all the others. Welcome everybody at our session. It was snowing here in Estonia today in the morning, but I'm sure in Portugal you are having a lot better weather. So we are feeling bad that we can't join you there in Portugal, but one day we will come again. I consider it a great privilege to have been invited to the conference, and wholeheartedly I would like to thank the Portuguese Presidency for their great work during these challenging times and for organizing the current conference. I would like to welcome you all to our first breakout session, which theme, of course, is very important. It will be about the shortages of medicines, but not only. I'm sure there is nobody in the audience who haven't experienced the difficulties of shortages of medicines. But today in our session, we try to concentrate to the solutions already. So I hope that after our session, the solutions will be on the table. So some introductory notes. I will be moderating the session in the beginning. At the end, my name is Kristin Raudsepp. I am the Director General of the Estonian State Agency of Medicines. My special interest for years in the agency and in the EU regulatory network has been the issue of availability of medicines. And I'm also the co-chair of the HMA-EMA task force of availability of medicines together with Mr. Noel Vatillon from EMA. About the technicalities, please mute your microphones if you are not talking. And you were all present and you have heard very inspiring lectures and ideas in the morning. And now you all have the possibility to go and have a say in a breakout session. There will be 4 breakout sessions, all chaired by very experienced colleagues from drug regulatory agencies, association from hospital pharmacists and consumer organizations. So the session number 1 will talk about national experience on shortages management. And the rapporteur will be Hugh Malone, the Director General of the Federal Agency for Medicines and Health Products of Belgium. Session 2 will be about shortages management plans to avoid availability problems. And the rapporteur will be Ms. Josipa Cvek, the Senior Advisor at the Croatian Agency for Medicinal Products and Medical Devices. Session number 3 will be about the solutions of hospital pharmacists for availability problems. And the rapporteur there will be Ms. Aida Batista, experienced hospital pharmacist representing the European Association of Hospital Pharmacists. And session number 4 will be about consumers and patients' perspectives on medicine shortages and about the case of small volumes and limited use medicines. And the rapporteur will be Ms. Monique Goyen, Director General of the European Consumer Organization, representing 45 national consumer associations in 32 European countries. So lots of interesting discussions. Unfortunately, you can't be everywhere at the same time. So you have to choose, and I know that you have made the choice already when registering to the conference. So we will come back together at 11:50. And listen to the rapporteurs giving 5 minutes conclusions. And after that, dear participants, you will have the possibility to ask questions, and please write your questions then into the chat box. With this, I would like to close my introductory words. I wish you a very fruitful discussions today. And now, whatever will be the technical miracle, please feel free to join the parallel breakout sessions of your interests in a lively discussion. And now I'm giving the floor to our 4 session rapporteurs, and please be back at 11:50. Thank you.
Hello, good morning. Am I in the right breakout room? Is this for session 4 about consumer perspectives? I don't hear anybody. Can somebody tell me whether I'm in the correct room? Okay, I don't hear anybody responding to me. So what I suggest, I'm a little bit blind because I only see 6 participants in my participant list, but it might be that many of you are muted, and not able to react, and that you also are not indicated as participants. So I would say, unless the production gives me some instructions to the contrary, I will just kick off the session. But please, if anybody would like, of those participants that have a mic that can be activated, please react if that is not the right way forward. It would be really great to know whether somebody can hear me. I give just 1 minute to see whether there is a check possible. I don't hear anybody. I see that Mr. Ivo Rui Santos is present. Can you maybe just say something?
Yes, I do. Yes. Good morning, Mrs. Can you hear me well?
Yes, I can.
Very pleased to see you, and thank you very much for being. You are in the right session, so you can continue, please.
I will continue. Thank you very much. And we
so
have
you have those who are registered can speak like myself, but you have others that will be able only to communicate through the chat.
Okay, but I was.
Thank you very much. Please proceed.
Okay, thank you. I was in front of a black screen, so that was a little bit like not a bad experience. So thank you for your help. So let's kick it off. We have not a lot of time, but we have a lot to say. So I would like to say, just as a very short introduction, because we only have half an hour ahead of us. Of course, we all know that COVID has highlighted the stress that can be experienced by people if there are shortages of drugs. but also of medical devices. But of course, COVID is just like, let's say, an illustration, because drug shortages exist beyond the COVID pandemic, and also since much longer than the pandemic has existed. 4 of BEUC members have carried out a survey with consumers on their experience related to drug shortages in Belgium, in Portugal, and it was DECO. I'm sure that the Portuguese colleagues know very well our member DECO. It was in Spain and in Italy. And the findings were really very, very concerning, because 29 to 46% of the households that have been surveyed have experienced a situation of shortage in the last 2 years. On all types of medicines, not only comfort medicine or luxury medicines. It was about drugs against diabetes, against allergies, sometimes even vaccines or cancer drugs, or sometimes against hypertension. So really drugs that you need in order for your health to be under control. And this is, of course, not without any consequence, not only in terms of stress and anxiety, but of course it can also worsen your health condition. In some cases, in all countries, in some cases, it has led to hospitalization. And there are, of course, there can be higher costs with alternative treatments. There can be side effects with alternative treatments. You end up needing to take a sick leave with your employer. And of course, if you have to go twice to a doctor for the same prescription or for the same disease, this is also a lot of, let's say, economic and medical time wasted. There are solutions, and the pharma strategy and the announced revisions of the existing legislation are a very important momentum to take stock of the problems and to identify possible solutions, be it in terms of stronger obligations of supply or coordination in times of crisis. And I would like to suggest to organize this very short session into two blocks of each more or less, let's say 12 minutes. That will be a challenge. The first block would be impact of drug shortages and root causes. So what is your experience with the impact, and what do you identify as root causes? And the second block of discussion would be, what would be the solutions that you identify? So the first block is really, maybe my personal wish would be to see whether the survey results that have been identified in 4 countries can be shared European-wide, so that we can inform the presidency, but also the European Union, about the fact that this is a European-wide problem. And when it comes to the solutions, this is a very good moment to inform the decision makers about solutions that have been identified by you, who are, educated, privileged stakeholders, and to, in that way, contribute to the revision of the pharma legislation. So let's go for the first round of questions. So the question I would like to ask you, and please raise your hand or make your voice heard if I don't see you. I can now see the hands raised by the breakout room participants that are allowed to use their mic. So I would like to ask you when you want to speak, to shortly present yourself, who you are and where you work, and to keep your intervention to a very short and sharp sentence, because I would like to make this breakout session as interactive as possible. So the question is, based on your experience and or the feedback that you receive from your constituencies, what is the impact of drug shortages on consumers and on patients and on the public health system? So who would like to kick off? You can raise your hand in the participants list, or you can just open your mic and take the floor. Ask the floor. Who would like to take the floor? Let's maybe see whether Violetta is there. Violetta, would you like to take the floor? No.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you very much. Yes. So what would be your feedback about the impact on, or what has been your experience in your country about drug shortages? Could you share that with the breakout session?
Thank you for asking the question. I must say that I'm not directly involved into the discussions on shortages, but of course, at the agency, we have had several discussions about delay in import, for instance, and how this has been tackled, how the problem has been dealt with. Usually there is kind of prediction, so what shortages can be expected in the coming months, so that this can be covered either with parallel import or with a replacement, switching to another medication. I think this is one of the ways that the problem is dealt with. Of course, it becomes much more serious when we are talking of medicines which cannot be replaced with something else, which do not have biosimilars, they're not generics, etc. And especially in the field of rare disease, this is a problem because very often there is only one treatment for a certain condition. And that means that there could be a very acute and serious problem for patients lacking treatment. And this is my first comment. I can't really give you some very specific examples, but I think it does show what are the ways that a country can deal with shortages. Thank you.
And you have already contributed to the second block because you already identify the possibility of, for example, parallel import. Would it be a solution for addressing drug shortages? Can I maybe ask Jordi to intervene? Or Jordi, I don't know whether I pronounced your name correctly. He doesn't have a mic. Maybe Nuno? Yes, thank you, Nuno. I see that you're unmuting yourself.
Yes. Hello. Yes.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Can you put the question again?
Yes, I mean, first of all, it would be good if you could present yourself and then
Yes.
to the audience, and then maybe just to say what are, for you, according to you, the experience in your country on shortages from the consumer perspective. Have you heard a lot of complaints or stress that has been shared with you? And what is the impact not only on the people, but also on the public health system?
Well, thank you. My name is Nuno Simões, and I'm head of a unit of a team of extremely skillful people here that works in Infarmed on the area of availability issues. The unit has been established last year, so we have been very much concentrating in having an intense collaboration with marketing and station holders. So following up every shortage that is notified in our reporting system, and making sure that they have the proper analysis and the proper follow-up with companies. Transparency was one of our first main concerns because there was no information publicly available yet on the shortages which were active at the time. So we decided also to increase a little of the exigency from the amount of information that is required for marketing authorizations to include in our reporting system, in order to also make it more rigorous, because some of our work has been to making sure that marketing authorization holders comply with the responsibilities in this area, and I think we are having some progresses. So transparency, the reporting system was also one of concerns, and then this, what I mentioned in my presentation, is the importance of having very close collaboration with companies in order to solve the problems in a collaborative way. I think this is having some results, positive results, and companies are more sensitive, or I think today for this area when it comes to manage shortages, when it comes to make sure that the patient doesn't miss the products they need, the medicinal products they need, yeah, I think the feedback from patients, at least we are in close also articulation in InfoMed with our medicine information center, and we normally try to reply to all the requests we received in order to, in terms of unavailability problems that might occur. We have some critical problems that we are trying to address.
Can I maybe just interrupt you? But have you a lot of complaints from people? I mean, do they address you with that? I mean,
in specific products, not, I wouldn't say a lot of complaints, but there are some complaints in specific products that there has been some period unavailability issues, but then after the product has been restored in the market, there is some lack of perhaps some miscommunication, because if it's a different product, or if the product has a different name that the following one that comes to the market, and or has a different leaflet or perhaps if it has an SPC in a different language, like it occurs sometimes, these might generate questions. And what we do is trying to publish as much as we can this information. We inform patients, we inform healthcare professionals about these new differences. First of all, we also ask the company to make a letter to healthcare professionals informing that there is a product, and that the product on the market will be different. And aside to that, we also make some information to healthcare professionals in order to inform everyone that the product is available, and if it has a different characteristics, we will also inform about it.
Thank you for that. And I hear from the production that we have 90 people in the breakout session. So I would like really to encourage you to. You are not allowed to speak. I mean, technically, seems to not to be possible. But please put the questions in the chat or the comments in the chat, and I will try to follow them up as soon as possible. I would like to react, Nuno, to what you said about a product that is being reintroduced in the market after having been changed, either the leaflet or sometimes even the composition or some of the adjuvants or so. We had a case in Italy, which is called the Aspen case, where a product that was like the only product available for a given disease, who has been withdrawn by the producer to the market, has created a shortage situation, has been reintroduced in the market with a price increase of something like 1,000%. This has been brought to the European Commission by our Italian member Altro Consumo. And the Commission has finally had a settlement with Aspen to say this is not acceptable, and they, at the end of the day, have. So this is creating an artificial situation of shortage, which would not be allowed when it comes about public health. I just wanted to share that with you, that sometimes it can be also a strategy. A strategy of the company that is not necessarily very, let's say, ethical. Can I say so? I'm speaking from the consumer organization perspective. I see that in the chat there is a comment saying that there is a need to let the public or the patient know about the mechanisms. Yes, you just spoke about transparency. And I think it is very important to really include and engage with the public in general, or with the patients, so that they understand how drug shortages are being managed by the authorities. because that is not really very well known, and it would also be maybe an interesting element of reassuring the public that there is a system, like let's say back office system in place, that the system could be indeed that there are solutions when a shortage does exist. Does that exist in Portugal? Oh, I see. Mr. Rui Santos, you would like to speak? The same person also mentioned Michaela Rosenberg, if I can just quote her, says that it is very important. In fact, the conversation on drug shortages should not, and I'm reflecting her in a comment in the chat, the management of drug shortages is not a conversation only with between a company and a regulator. There is also, it is very important to involve at a very early stage also the patients' organizations, or depending, or the consumer organizations, so that they can either flag problems that have been identified or contribute also to preventing it. And for example, there among the solutions, there can also be more expansive obligations for suppliers to have, I mean, to prevent supply shortages by different systems of, let's say, safeguards. I think that, I don't know whether, Nuno, you would like to add something, but otherwise I go to the second block of which we have already, of course, touched upon, because you spoke more about the solutions than about the problems, because the problems, I'm sure that you know them by heart. Let's then go maybe also in the chat for those of you who are interested to contribute and available to contribute. It would be very now solutions to address drug shortages. I have heard about parallel imports. I have heard about transparency, better, let's say, ex ante engagement with all the parties concerned. Now, of course, there is a momentum there where we can really give it a very big boost. Also because the pandemic has demonstrated that we really need something to do to prevent such type of shortages, certainly when there is a crisis management situation. And so we have the revised pharma legislation, or the pharma legislation to revise. That is a very important moment where we can improve the system. And the question that I would like to ask to the participants is really which specific measures can contribute to that. For example, I don't know whether the regulators that are participating in this room, what do you think about the obligation that should be put on producers when they, request a marketing authorization to also supply, together with that marketing authorization, a drug shortage prevention plan and management plan? So what would be your take on that? Or any other solution you would say, but I would really like to see a little bit whether this is something that you would consider interesting. Who would like to take the floor? I don't see anybody wanting to take the floor. I see moderator D. Mr. Rui Santos, would you like to take the floor? No. So okay, so everybody considers that having preventive supply shortages prevention and management plans together with the marketing authorization of a drug would be a good idea. So I consider that I might give this as one of the conclusions of or the suggestions, at least, of this breakout session. Now, what is very important also is public notification of drug shortages. in order to mitigate their impact on patients, so that people are not really taken by surprise, so that you don't necessarily take a drug on a constant basis, but if there is a long-term shortage that is anticipated by the supplier, this should be maybe communicated in a less disruptive way by the supplier to the public opinion. So has anybody in this breakout session, and I'm also inviting again contributions to in the chat, any contribution to make about what is a good communication measure? So how do you communicate in the best way on drug shortages, knowing that you should not lead to panic buys, like a run on what was it, toilet paper in the beginning of the pandemic. So there should not be no run, but also you should let's say make people aware that there might be a difficulty to get access to drugs that they would expect to see available. Mr. Luis Santos, would you like to intervene?
Yes, Ms. Goyens, I apologize because I've been switching around the breakout sessions, and just to check a little bit, I think these systems are really a challenge. I'm not sure if my colleague Nuno Simões has intervened, because I think he's in the session. But what I would say is that we here at InfarMed, we have been very conscious of the importance of the good communication with patients and consumers. So it has been one of our, let's say, our priorities, because we have set up a unit which we wanted to really increase this mechanisms of communication, because we have felt that in many occasions there was insufficient information about the real problems or what would be the solution. So this is something that we are working quite a lot on this respect, and even recently we have decided to make available public information on the shortages, but particularly also to provide indications what could be the alternatives or what can be the solutions. Perhaps Nuno has mentioned that. So certainly this kind of mechanisms is something that we should improve, and of course it's also in a way some sort of obligation that we should have from the part of the companies whenever there is a difficulty which has to be explained, that we have to find a way forward. So just to reinforce this, the importance of this element, I think there is a noise now. I'm not sure if it's on my side, but I don't know if Nuno wants to add something. I couldn't hear what he said, so just I don't want to repeat, because he's the head of the unit that we have specifically set up to have a dedicated team because from our perspective, this is a problem that has to be seen always from the perspective of the patient and from the consumer. So that's why we really wanted to have a dedicated team that would work vis-a-vis the patients and the consumers. Thank you, Ms. Goyens.
If I can still ask you a follow-up question, and then I think we almost need to conclude. It's a little bit because so you and your colleague Nuno also mentioned that it's more about transparency and close cooperation. But what do you think? What is your attitude or your approach towards a database on drug shortages, so that there can be a follow-up, like a public database, of course, that is available, and that could then, of course, help people identify whether drug shortages are to be feared in the months to come or for a year to come. And so, and that contains, of course, relevant information also for consumers, and not only technical information.
I mean, as a matter of principle, we would favor the availability of a database with this kind of information. What we are also, let's say, stressing is that this should not be a way to deviate ourselves from finding the solution. So it's important that we provide the information, but still we need to go into the more structural solution. I think you mentioned this at the very beginning, if I could hear a little bit of your introduction. Also when it comes to look into the tools that we have in the legislation. But I would think that if we can reinforce this kind of database with this type of information, I think this would be quite important, and also to do it in a collaborative way across the EU. But still, with not losing the focus on overcoming but we know that always we'll have problems, but still we should bring them into the real situations which are related to problems of quality or production or this sort of thing, but to make possible that other types of problems should be minimized as much as we can.
And the fact that this database would be available, let's say, across member states can also help, in fact, mitigate the effects, because then you can really exchange information and intelligence, and can help also addressing quickly the supplier in the different member states that there is a problem and that we need to address it very quickly. Yes, I'm just checking, and I also see that there was a proposal to have a high-level forum with all stakeholders involved in order to create this community around managing, or first of all, identifying the root causes, addressing, as you said, it's not only about transparency, it's about addressing the issue before making it transparent.
But so it's a good question that perhaps you now bring it to the general discussion with Christine. With Christine in a moment, so I think this could be a good question to bring up now. I will now leave you, Ms. Wellens, okay?
For popping in.
Thank you very much. I will really appreciate your.
Thank you. I'm checking in the chat. I think I have at least mentioned the different comments that are in the. That have been mentioned in the chat. It's difficult because the moderator sees also the chat of the other session, so I have to identify our session there. Some sort of multitasking duty today, and I will also the comments that I have seen, I will also bring them to the plenary back. Is there anybody wanting to add something before? Maybe we can just decide, because we have only 3 minutes left. Is there anything that we can that somebody would like to share, either in the chat or orally? I don't know whether Nuno or Violeta would like to mention anything on top of what has already been said.
If I can add something, Violeta.
Yes, Violeta, please go ahead.
Communication is really key, because sometimes fears of patients are much bigger than actually the problem as such is. And I apologize for the telephone, which is ringing all the time. Sorry about that. We had recently a case about switching from one medication to another one for patients with hypothyroidism, so the T3, T4 replacement therapy. And the fear in the patient community was actually much larger than the problem as such. And only when clear evidence was provided on how many patients actually had to switch and how many of these had to go through up titration, it was very clear to the patient community and to the healthcare professionals how large the problem is. So, to cut a long story short, I think communication with evidence can be very helpful in this kind of situation.
And as somebody in the chat mentioned, it is very important not to create like a run. So the panic must be managed, because people are fear. And so there must be really a very, let's say, smart communication in order not to create a panic movement that is then overdoing it. And that is certainly also not the right thing to do, putting too much pressure on your health professional in order to get the prescription to have to stockpile in your house. I mean, that's not necessarily possible, but it can happen in some countries, and that's certainly something that should not be acceptable. And so the communication and in a balanced way, not creating over fears, but still being honest about the scale of the problem is an important part of managing also the drug shortage. So thank you very much for that contribution, Violeta. I would say I just check whether there is something else in the yes, somebody in the comments said that the obligation to supply after market authorization, that seems to be something that is not the right solution. So we mentioned the fact to have an obligation to have a prevention plan after marketing authorization, and that would say what the lady says there is that especially for orphan drugs, it is very important that there should be no drugs shortage happening. So if I got it right, but it's difficult to read. So I would say thank you very much for those of you who have participated actively, Nuno, and also your colleague, Mr. Rui Santos and Violeta, and those of you who have been chatting with us in comments. Sorry if I did not take all comments on board, but it is technically very difficult to be managing this. And I would say then let's go back to the plenary room, although I don't know how to do that. So let's hope that it's going to be managed by the production. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I hope that Christina is going to recover us in one way or the other.
For coming back. I know you had very good discussions. I see a lively chat also going on, so I know that you are having now the solutions. Please put them on the table. And we are starting, Hugh, from you, please. You have 5 minutes to say.
So, with some technical issue during my presentation, so we didn't have such a long time to discuss, but yet I had the chance to present the law that we put forward in Belgium in 2019, that we in fact used as well during the COVID crisis, which was helpful in some places. We also showed that the platform we have put into place that connect the agency with the lay public, with the wholesaler and marketing holder authorization, as well as the pharmacist, was quite helpful to exchange the right information. Of course, all the information are not always available for everybody, as you might imagine. So we need to segregate and do our best to be, for the lay public, quite straightforward and understandable. And for others, we can go more into details about what could be done. We explained that we also have a tree to define to give a good definition of what is a critical medicine and a critical issue that we need to tackle. We come into the conclusion, and there was discussion, some question around it in the chat, that price is indeed a problem because it is a powerful driver for parallel trade. I give an explanation that very often the parallel trader in Belgium come to me and to the politicians saying that they are a part of the solution. I would say yes, but the but being that you might solve a problem somewhere by creating another problem somewhere else. So we need to be very careful on this side, not by blocking parallel trade, because I think it is useful to keep the price at a certain lower level, I would say. But on the other hand, we need to be careful that it's not an incentive to provoke a disruption in the market. And in specific case, we saw that, and our colleague from Slovakia explained that they did change the law in order to block this incentive for traders, but quite rapidly they find a way around, and now they are facing the same problem they had before the law. So that's a tricky problem. That's something we need to address all together in a coordinated way, not being seen as trying to interfere with the free movement of goods, of course, but on the other hand, trying to protect all European lay public and citizen and to help them to get access to important medicines. So that would be my conclusion.
Thank you. Thank you for this. We will listen all the conclusions, and then we can have a discussion and some more questions. So thank you, and we are going to session number 2. Josipa, please.
Yes, thank you. Well, the topic of the session 2 was shortages management plans to avoid availability problems, where we discussed the importance of initiatives focused on stability of pharmaceutical supply chain. As the reasons for shortages are complex, there is no quick solution available by implementing a single measure. So we agreed that some of them should be early communication on possible supply disruptions of all stakeholders within the supply chain, then management of shortages with patient in focus, like exchange in clinical practice to prioritize use of the product for specific patient group, then regulatory initiatives to the most vulnerable medicinal products to shortages such as old but still clinically important medicines would also be useful to keep these products on the market. And focus should be moved from safety and efficacy to their quality, since quality issues are most often the cause of their shortages. And since forecasting of national medicines demand is gaining in importance as an idea that could be of help in timely prevention of shortages, we also discussed development of EU platform for monitoring the medicine stock levels. But this is very sensitive area, and it will be better to focus on manufacturers' responsibility to ensure adequate stock levels, for example, to investigate possibility to have industry to have buffer stocks as a part of the procurement procedure. And that will be the conclusion from our session. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now, Aida, please, session number 3.
Thank you. My session was about the hospital pharmacy solutions for availability problems. We talked about the way hospital pharmacists deal with shortages, what kind of actions they have to take, and we think that hospital pharmacies have a direct stake in the efficient functioning of the medicine supply chain and the operation of medicines reimbursement system that enable patients on hospital to benefit for sustainable and equitable access to medicines they require. Nevertheless, there are some barriers to treatment assessment. And one of the barriers are the procurement practices and policies that link to pricing and reimbursement can tackle medicine shortages, and we have to break down these barriers. And also the national policy choices linked to procurement, to value assessment and price mechanisms should safeguard the access of patients. One of the questions that we had was why, if the EMA or the national agency approves a medicine, why another health assessment technology has to be provided to allow, for instance, as in Portugal, to hospitals buy the medicines for a patient. That was one of the questions. And one of the questions is the affordability and the sustainability of the system. And we have to be sure that innovation is used on those patients that really need and can benefit for that medicine. So we already also talked about EMA actions, the practice guidance, good practice to solve shortages and mitigate impact. It is briefly, as long as COVID situation allow us to be published, and the hospital pharmacists are involved, and the input of hospital pharmacists is very important on this issue. Also, hospital pharmacists are involved on the structured dialogue for shortages for the EU in two groups, the critical medicines and also the vulnerabilities of the supply chain. So the hospital pharmacists are should be always part of the solution of accessibilities and shortages. This is one of the conclusions that you will see briefly in a position paper from the European Association of Hospital Pharmacists that will be launched after our General Assembly. Maybe in end of June, August, we'll have a position paper on availability of medicines of Hospital Pharmacists Association. Thank you.
Thank you for this explanation. And now word and floor to Monique, please, the consumers and patients perspective.
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you very much for giving the opportunity to include into this event also the perspective of consumers and patients when it comes to impact of drug shortages. What is the type of impact? Well, we have discussed this also very shortly in the session. It is, of course, stress and anxiety. It can be that they become more unhealthy, sicker, and sometimes even that can lead to hospitalization. And also sometimes the effect of there can be side effects of the alternative treatment or even also higher costs, just to mention a few. We have also shortly mentioned the reasons for these shortages. And what we would like to highlight is the fact that sometimes it can be linked to the commercial strategy of a company, like just withdrawing a drug from the market, creating an artificial shortage, then reintroducing it at a much higher price. This is not good for the consumer finance and not good for the public health finance neither. Quite some solutions have been identified and suggested. I will try to mention most of them. We have mentioned also parallel import as one of the solutions, but I would like, as personally, to agree with the first rapporteur saying that might be just shifting the problem somewhere else, and that the solution in that context is really more coordination at European level, so that situations of local shortages can be outweighed or neutralized by a more European-wide coordination. There has been also mention of the fact that companies need to with rigor notify to regulators when there is a situation of drug shortages, and there should be public reporting on those shortages via a database that is accessible to all stakeholders. We also believe that authorities need to be very proactive when it comes to communicating about drug shortages, because sometimes patients, or most of the time, patients are not aware of the fact that there is a shortage that might affect a treatment that they need to undergo. However, it has been quite made clear also in the chat that there is a need not to over-communicate, in the sense that you should not create a situation of fear, of panic, and a run on those drugs that are still available at a temporary level. So it needs to be smart communication, so that consumers do not overreact when it comes to the shortage. So it's important to give also the right proportion of the figures that are in terms of shortages. Another proposal that was made is to set up high-level collaborative forum that are multi-stakeholders, meaning, of course, the regulators, of course, the different regulators that are involved in drug putting drugs on the market and paying for them, but also, of course, the companies, but also patient and consumer representatives, so that they can be involved at an early stage in order to do their job in communicating towards the people, the public opinion about what's happening with some drugs. And also they can feed back to the forum and to the other stakeholders the situations that are being experienced by the people on the ground. There should be also stronger obligations on companies in terms of the obligation to present to the marketing authorization process also a drug shortage prevention and management plan. So this is something that we believe is a very important step that would need to be quite quickly. We also believe that once a company has a market authorization, there should be an obligation for it to market, not just to keep it somewhere in the drawers. Although we know that there are, of course, after the marketing authorization, very important decisions to be taken on the pricing and on the reimbursement that will also have, of course, an effect on the availability or the accessibility of medicine. As a conclusion, what I would like to stress is the good news is there are plenty of solutions that are possible to address either prevent or manage drug shortages, and that the upcoming the pharma strategy and the upcoming legislation that will be reviewed or will be reinforced are, and in particular also the regulation that is about the reinforcement of the mandate of the European Medicines Agency are a perfect momentum to really try to improve prevention and management of drug shortages in Europe, and we should take that opportunity to make that that problem, to keep that problem under control. Thank you.
Thank you very much for these words. These sound like music to my ears, that there are plenty of solutions. So I'm sure that Portuguese presidency have written them all down and can present them and make them to life, like council conclusions and whatever actions could you take. Thank you all for these conclusions. Now we have time to answer again some questions. So anybody from the audience, if you would like to ask something, please write in the chat box. But to open this discussion, I would like to say that I'm somehow the feeling that agencies, pharmacists, even patients know so many things, what they can do and what they have done already to prevent, to mitigate the shortages. Again and again we hear that the regulators should be more flexible, but we can't forget that how flexible can the regulators be not to harm the evaluation of quality, efficacy and safety. Actually, the power of having the medicinal products on the market in the first place is in the hands of the industry. So if there is anybody in the audience from industry, even if you can't ask it orally, you can write something into the chat box. I would be very much interested in the opinion of the industry about these proposals, that stronger obligations for the industry and risk management plans, inspections. So if anybody from the industry can step in, it would be also nice. But as I don't see at the moment I can see a comment about growing regulatory requirements and price-strict policies. It might be true, but as a regulator, I can tell that we are working hard to harmonize the regulatory requirements between the countries. And I like very much the idea of discussion further. Do we have the paper information leaflet in the package, or we can, in taking into account all the technical possibilities we are having, maybe we can make the life easier and use a blank medicinal product to guarantee that we could quickly move one medicine to another country, and we will find the information in national language in some other way other than the national language paper in the box. I have the question to Hugh and
Yes.
as the people from the agency. What do you think about the inspection of the shortages? Actually, it is something we don't do very often, and I think it is not something what is in the EU legislation either. So, but those who work every day with shortages, they say that they see hundreds of colors of the reason of shortage. Industry saying commercial reason, or whatever. So what do you think about the inspection of shortages?
That's a tough question. It depends where you want to go with your inspection. You can go in a factory or rather go for wholesalers or distributors. I think the supply chain is quite large. And if we only go to the industry, even with an inspection, I would say, for instance, at the Belgian headquarters of a company, I'm not sure I will get information what people want to see, in fact. I've worked for the industry when I was younger, and pricing discussion, they are quite difficult in the industry. We were a very few number of, we were like a handful number of persons that were really aware of what were the price throughout the countries. So I think it's not pricing. It's a very tough parameters to control because, as you probably know as well, transfer pricing can be applied. And so if you go to a factory and you ask, what is the cost of your product? It's impossible to really understand what is the relationship between the true value of the product you have in front of you and the price that is used throughout the supply chain. So I can understand the reflection and the thought that you need to go for inspection and try to understand, but that's not an inspector that can help understand the construction of a price. I don't know if I'm clear here, Christine.
Thank you. It is exactly what I was thinking, that it is not an easy task. Josipa, would you like to add something about the idea of inspecting the shortages?
I just want to add that as a national spokesperson, I just want to inform you that within our spoke network, there is an extensive discussion on this topic, and to set better coordination between inspectors and spoke network, because it's easy when you have a quality defect in a factory at your home. But what if manufacturer is in another member state, or how to coordinate and exchange information, because manufacturing issues are the most often the cause of shortages. For example, the old equipment, and so I just want to inform you that this topic is under discussion extensively within the SPOC.
Yeah, so I wish you all the strength, because really I think that it is something we should understand together with the industry. What is the actual reason? Maybe the study from the European Commission will help us understanding the root causes, but it doesn't matter how flexible are patients, how flexible are regulators, the medicines are coming from industry. Mm-hmm. So thank you. I can see in the chat box, Portuguese colleagues have said they have done inspections. Yeah, should be applied in the European legislation, which I think is true, because as you know, at the moment all the regulators and all the stakeholders are working hard with shortages, but it is not in the European legislation in such a way at all. So I really hope that it will be the future, and I know the legislation is open at the moment, so I hope something will come there. So not a concrete question, but maybe I would like to ask from Aida, from you, what do you think, who has the most of the power in this chain of stakeholders to solve the situation what we are facing every day? Who has the most of the power to do something?
Well, if you want a simple question, well, we all have to solve our problems, but of course, the strongest on the supply chain is the manufacturers and the industry, but we have to also help them with some or give them some tools and some information from our side to them to solve some of the issues that sometimes they are not fully understood from our side as healthcare professionals. Because what I want is to have a medicine for my patient. I don't care how I get it, but I want the medicine, the right medicine from the patient. If a provider says to me, I don't have that medicine, I say, it's your fault because you don't produce enough medicines for me to have and sometimes it's not the truth. So we have to keep going on this structured dialogue full of transparency and with multi-stakeholders and make everyone understand that we are producing something that is not valuable. It's health. Health can't have a value. Health is the basic value that you need for all the citizens of the world, not only from Europe, but all of the citizens. And we have to together to build some kind of a chain that every small piece goes smoothly to the other, and it is very transparent in the supply chain to get the best treatment in an affordable way, because we don't have money at this moment. Europe and all the countries, even not only a poor country like Portugal, but all the countries have problems with money, with currency, and we should the availability of medicines should be affordable, even if we hospital pharmacies start to manipulate, to compound medicines to solve the shortages.
Thank you, Aida. Monique, yes, I'm giving the floor to you, please.
Thank you. I would like to react to something because there has been a lot of talk about the price of medicines. And from the consumer perspective, you need to be aware that the pricing of medicines is a black box. How much is being invested in R&D? How much is just promotional and marketing expenses? And what we see here also is that sometimes people, like you and me, we end up paying twice. First, as taxpayers, because there is a lot of public funding going into research and development, and certainly now, I mean, and for good reasons. But what is the return if I, as taxpayer, contribute to the development of a drug, and for example, of a new drug, and we all want to help developing new drugs for important diseases or vaccines. But then I have also to pay, and then there is also high prices in some instances or non-reimbursement of some drugs. So I would really say that the consumer part or the patient part of drug shortages has to be handled in parallel and in combination with the availability part, and that the pricing, I mean, helping to be more transparent on how pricing structures are being set would also sometimes help people understand how the market functions. But what we would really like to prevent, and where we would really like to see more transparency, is this, first of all, transparency. How is it funded? And if there is public funding, how is this being echoed in the pricing and reimbursement discipline? This is for us something, a fair market is where you don't pay twice for the same product. Thank you.
Thank you for this. Of course, this is absolutely clear that the transparency about the prices and transparency in the whole supply chain, it is very important. Yeah, so I see that we are already running into the lunch, and probably the wine is warm and the food is cold already, but maybe just to close up from our wonderful panelists, is there anything you could say how to make the better cooperation we are doing at the moment? Because we saw last year when the pandemic started, all the nice words about cooperation between the member states, they somehow crashed. And now we are building it up again piece by piece. So do you want to say something how we could do better cooperation to solve the issue of shortages between all of our stakeholders, regulators? Josipa, would you like to just final words?
I again can speak from the perspective of spokesperson, because through Spoke Network we exchange information on possible shortages of critical medicines where there are no alternatives, and then we share information on available solutions, available alternatives between member states. And I have to admit that I'm happy with this cooperation. It's very successful. So I have a good experience.
Thank you. It sounds well. The Spoke system, which is quite new, is working well, and you are happy. So thank you for this information. Hugh, would you like to say how to make better cooperation working to solve shortages?
Okay, sorry, because I was muted by by the organization. Could you please repeat your question, Christine?
So just the word cooperation wouldn't be just a nice word. Everybody says it, that we need better cooperation. But can you say something we could do already tomorrow to just find again the point of the cooperation, what could help us to avoid and mitigate the shortages?
I think cooperation, it starts with transparent communication at every single level, including your own stakeholder in your country and your colleague in the various competent authority, as well as the EMA and the European Commission. To me, it's a very important point. To give you an example, very straightforward, we got a call from a wholesaler complying because a company refused to deliver medicine, and they claimed it was for the public services. So of course we went to this marketing authorization holder, and we learned that within 2 months, this wholesaler has ordered more than twice what was forecasted for the Belgian market. And we were, of course, in front of a big shortage. And the shortage was, of course, in other countries in Europe, probably including Estonia, I would say. So you see here, people are really, some people are hiding information in the supply chain. And this shouldn't be allowed, because then you take the wrong action against the wrong people. So to me, what we need really to leverage today, it's to have a transparent communication from all stakeholders and also between the different agencies.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Aida, would you like to say something for better cooperation?
Well, you know, I'm dealing with this issue of shortages for more than 10 years. So I keep going, and I will not give up until until I'm retired or something happens good. So I think we must listen to each other and listen carefully, and not with prejudices and not with some kind of untrust. We must trust our stakeholders, and if they trust us and we trust them, we'll find a solution for sure. Of course, with transparency, as said before.
Thank you. And Monique, your last words.
I'm aware that I'm the last person who withholds you from your glass of wine, so let me be very quick. I would like to say, I think that national solutions are not 21st century proof. We are living in a global world. We are living in the European Union, and from our perspective, cooperation, exchange of information, coordination, and solidarity are the way forward. And when it comes to drug shortages, a system that can be built up very quickly, not maybe tomorrow, but maybe within the year, is to have a common database that is shared by member states authorities on drug shortages, so that there is a possibility really to flag very quickly where are the hot spots, and that can then also help managing together the sectors where there is a more, let's say, structural problem. Thank you. And bon appétit, as we say in my country.
Thank you very much. I can see also some comments in the chat box that a high-level forum will be key, and comments from industry. Beata saying, explaining again what is the point of the industry in that question. And that we should work together, it is for sure. And as our panelist said, the transparent communication from all stakeholders, not only regulators, is extremely important. But with that, I would like to thank you for a very interesting session. Thank you all the panelists and session chairs, and I would like to thank all the participants. I wish you all the best and hope that the ideas from today will come into the life and change the scene of our everyday life. So I will be working hard in the area of shortages, so probably we will meet again before we can solve it finally. So goodbye and have a nice lunch, and I think the conference will go on about in an hour, so you can see it in the agenda, so please take care. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you, bye.
Bye.